Okay, I'm not going to be able to finish this shir today. We'll just try to, I wanted to give a few insights into Megillas Esther. There's so much hiding inside of Megillas Esther. Maybe that's why it's called Megillas Esther. It's the stira, it's mastir. It's Megala, the historim. It's Megala, the things that are hidden. There's a Gemara. The Gemara brings down, there's a kapitel Tehillim, Chaf Beis, Lamnatseach al Yelis HaShachar Mizmor LeDavid, Keli Lama Azhavtani, Rochek Miyeshuasi Divrei Shagosi. So the Gemara says that this kapitel was said by Esther. It was said by Esther. There's a machlokes whether it's said by Esther when she was in the chutzner of the Beis HaMelech on the day she was going in, and there were avodah zorahs there, and she had reached the level of Ruach HaKodesh. She was like a neviah, and now all of a sudden the nevuah left her because she was in a place where there's avodah zorah all over the place. Keli Loma Azhavtani. And others say that it was when she was forcibly taken into the palace because she was hiding. She didn't want to go into this beauty contest. She was hiding, and so was forcibly taken. And she says, "Keli Loma Azhavtani." So this kapitel is Lamnatseach al Ayeles HaShachar. There's a whole big question: what exactly is this Ayeles HaShachar? So Rashi brings down two pshatim. The first pshat is that it's a type of musical instrument, so it's Lamnatseach on this musical instrument called the Ayeles HaShachar. The other pshat is Ayeles HaShachar, which is, it may not be real pshat in the pasuk, but Nogeya to Esther, it's the real pshat. Ayeles HaShachar is the morning star, or it's the break of dawn. Ayeles HaShachar is either the break of dawn or the morning star. So Esther is considered the morning star. What does that mean? She's the morning star. She's the breaking of the morning. Just like, so the Gemara says, just like the shachar, the morning, is the end of the night, so too, Esther is the end of all the nisim. There are no more nisim after Esther. All the nisim were in Bayis Rishon. There are no more nisim after Esther.
Nisim is a night?
No. It's a mashal. It's a mashal. Yeah, nisim is light. Nisim is light. It's like, when you all of a sudden you have a flash of light and you can see you see the hashgacha pratis. All of a sudden, a nes happened. That's when you see a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And without the flash of light, it's dark. So we'll see, one second. The Gemara asked the kasha, what do you mean that Esther is the end of all the nisim? What do you do with Hanukkah? So it says the nisim that were written down in the Sifrei Kodesh, in the Tanakh. Hanukkah is not written down in the Tanakh, so that's not considered. So as Pesach pointed out, there's a very big problem over here. It should be the other way around. If Esther is the end of all the nisim, so she should be the beginning of the night. It's the beginning of Golus. Until now there was light. We had nisim.
Well, now she represents a nes.
She represents a nes, but it was a hidden nes. It was a hidden nes, and she's the end of all the nisim. It was like the nisim got lower and lower, less noticeable. This nes was almost unnoticeable. If you don't know all the midrashim we're going to go through a few of the midrashim of Megillas Esther, you won't understand the real nes that happened here. The Megillas Esther looks totally al pi teva. It looks like it's al pi teva. It's just a really beautiful, storyline, like, it's a story with installments, it took 11 years to happen, and but it's a beautiful storyline, right? But there's a lot hidden underneath the surface, how the nisim of how Kodesh Baruch Hu is guiding the whole story from beginning to end. So if you're going to say that Esther you should say that Esther is the end of the day. Until now there were nisim. They had nisim galuyim during Bayis Rishon, and now we're going into Gullus. They're in Gullus Bavel, and Esther is the end of the day, the end of all the nisim. Therefore, if it's the end of the nisim, it should be the Tzeisa Kachavim, when the beginning of night. Why does the Gemara say? This is the question. Why does the Gemara say that Esther is Ayelas HaShachar? She's the end of the night, because she's like the end of the nisim. It should be the opposite way. I'm going to leave this hanging.
Rabbi's doing installments.
Yes, I'm doing installments. Megillas Esther, like I just mentioned. Megillas Esther, like I just mentioned, it shows us the hashgacha protis from the beginning to the end in seemingly natural events. You look at the Megillah is very, very intricate, very detailed, and there's coincidence, there's constant coincidences, and it's like pieces of a puzzle. But once you put the coincidences together, you see a beautiful picture. Mamish, there was a geula. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was arranging a geula for the Yidden. And this is something we have to recognize for ourselves, that every event is part of something bigger happening. There's a unifying purpose in everything that happens to us. Just like by the Megillah, there was a unified purpose. So by our lives, there's also a unified purpose. And this is revealing how we have to understand that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a hashgacha pratis on our whole lives, from the time we were born until maybe Esrim, and even further, Ad Bias Mashiach. Now, related to this, there's a halacha. The question is, where do you have to hear the Megillah from? From which section? Which part is the most important part of the Megillah? There's several opinions in the Gemara. Where do you start reading the Megillah? That it is li'ikuva, that if you're not yotzi, you're chayv if you don't hear that section. And we pass on like Reb Meir, you have to hear the whole Megillah, from beginning until the end. And this is different than many, many other things. Kriyas HaTorah, according to Rov Poskim, is a chiyuv on the tzibur, and if you didn't hear a pasuk, you're yaitzi. There are those who are machmir. I'm personally machmir. I want to hear everything. But the shitas of the Bir Halacha and Rav Moshe. But al pi strict din, you don't really have to hear the whole Kriyas HaTorah. It's a chiyuv on the tzibur. The only kriya that we have, this is likuva, every word is Parshas Zohar. But chutz from that, you don't have to hear everything. All the Megillas, when we hear the Megillas, if you miss something, nu. If you miss something out of the Haftarah, nu. So all the Kriyas, if you miss something, nu. All of a sudden over here, by the Megillah, what's new? All right, you missed it. You don't have to go crazy to look for a different minion.
I mean, new means.
Oh.
I use it a lot.
But over here, if you don't hear one word, you're not yotzi. Even if that word doesn't seem to be so important. It's not an important word. What's the difference if I miss that word or what's it got to do with the story? So, we have Bayomim Ahem Kasheves Hamelech Achashverosh Al Kisi Malchuso Asher B'Shushan Abira. So I didn't hear that pasuk. It's so important. It's not part of the real storyline. storyline is with Esther and Haman and all the intrigues and the assassination attempt. That's the real story. But Achashverosh happens to be sitting on the Kisei Malchusa Yasher B'Shusha Abira. What does that have to do with anything? Why is that so important that if I miss that pasuk, I'm not Yotzi? So we have to understand that every detail, the Esther, when she wrote the Megillah, Esther and Mordechai, they wrote the Megillah, every detail was put in is important. It shows something about the whole course of events of Hashgacha Pratis.
And the Torah, it's not.
Why is that? Yeah. Why
Huh?
And the Torah, it's not.
And what?
Chumshei Torah, it's not.
I'm talking about the Chi of Kriya. Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. But it's important in and of itself. By the Chumash, every detail, they're separated. The Taryag Mitzvah, so everything is separated. It's not really one long storyline. Over here, there's a storyline. There's a storyline that the Chazal wanted you to understand the Hashgacha Pratis from the beginning and to the end, and you have to see how everything fits in.
Okay. And we don't have that in Chumshei Torah.
It's not a storyline. It's details. You know, the details are important. The details are liikuva. Yeah, that's true.
So why don't
But it's
we have
detail.
that?
It's details. Individual details.
So why-
Over
why
here,
did we miss a word with Toyota?
because the chiyuv of Kriyas HaTorah is just that there should be limud HaTorah barabim. It's a way of learning. It's just
So the point here is not Limud Torah.
huh?
When we hear Megillat Esther, the point isn't Limud Torah.
The point is not. It's also limud HaTorah, but it's the point is it's pirsumi anes. It's more than limud HaTorah. It's pirsum anes. If you miss one word, one line, there's something missing in the pirsum of the nes, because you're missing a detail of that. The whole thing is one big nes. Nice. It's a giant nes. Who is Achashverosh? Who is Achashverosh? Vayhi b'mei Achashverosh. Who Achashverosh? Who is this guy? Right? So it happens to be that he happens to be a stable boy of Evel Merodach. Evel Merodach, where he was I think he was the son of Nebuchadnezzar. So, and he was the king, and Achashverosh, I don't know if he killed him, but he got killed. The kings didn't last very long in those days. So Evel Merodach, he was a stable boy. He was a low guy, and he paid a lot of money. And he bought his way into the Melucha. Then there was Belshazzar, and Belshazzar got knocked off. And then, I don't know, there's another couple of guys there in the meanwhile. And then Achashverosh comes along. And he bought his way into the Melucha. So, but he was a nobody. He had no yichus. So his only claim to yichus was Vashti, and we'll see about that in a second. Vashti was the daughter of Belshazzar. Vashti was the daughter of Belshazzar, so she was Melucha. So he married her, and so his money and Vashti are his claim to being a king. Now, he wanted to aggrandize himself, getting good with the people, right? And so he felt that the way to getting good with the people was to be very lavish, extravagant. He had to show off. He had to show his money out. He wanted to buy the opinion. He wanted to buy public opinion so they should accept him as a king. So he knew history, and Shlomo Melech had a throne, and it was a marvelous throne. It was a magical throne. It had lions on it and everything like that. And it was all api Kabbalah, and there was a king, Paro Necha. So they asked the question, why is he called Paro Necha? He's the cripple, Paro the cripple, because he tried to sit on the throne. He took the throne to Egypt, and he tried to sit on the throne, and the lions bit him. He had gold lions on there, and the gold lions bit him. So he became a cripple. Since then, nobody ever tried to sit on that throne. They knew it was a dangerous throne to sit on. Achashverosh wanted this throne. This was the most glorious throne in the world. So he said, I'm going to build my own throne without all the magic to it, and it's going to be marvelous. He hunted the whole countryside for artisans, furniture makers, gold craftsmen that knew how, that were able to build such a throne. The only place he could find that had such people was in Shushan, a little outlying, little unknown town somewhere in Persia, not near Bavel. There's Bavel, and then there's Persia, and there was an outlying little hick town. So they built this throne, and then they tried to move it, and it couldn't budge. It was too heavy. Oy vavoy. So what do? If you can't bring the throne to the capital, you bring the capital to the throne. So he moved his capital from Bavel to Shushan. He made Shushan a beer. He built a gorgeous palace around this throne. This was his throne. And he built the palace around the throne, and he moved everything to Shushan. Now he's new in Shushan. Nobody knows him. So he says he's got to get in good with the people. So this is now, it says in the third, that's why it says in the third year. It took them 3 years to build this throne. So in the third year, big party. He's going to have a big party. This party lasted half a year, 180 days. Half a year this party lasted, right? And every day he brought out, he found the treasure trove of Nebuchadnezzar. He had a gorgeous treasure. He brought it out, and every day he showed a different section of the treasury, right? Different kalim. So every day was a new scene in the museum. It was like a new museum. So people kept on coming to see new things. So, and it was this talk of the countryside. Everybody came from all over the countryside to see his treasury, and they had a good time, and they had a lot of food and a lot of drink, and everybody's enjoying themselves, and everybody's getting tipsy. Now, if you were drinking for
180 days.
100,
You know it's a party then.
yeah, it was a big party. So at the end.
They come to the Jews and say Shabbat Yom Pesach.
So at the end, he threw a 7-day party for the people in Shushan. He wanted the people in Shushan to accept him. So he threw a special party, 7 days, for the Jews, the people, the residents of Shushan. He should be accepted. Everybody should love him. We love the Melech. He's mamish. He's throwing a banquet every day. We're having a good time. He's a good king. Why Shushan? Why this whole thing? And why is it brought down in the Megillah? So the Vilna Gaon, he's got the whole storyline laid out. This was part of the Ness. Mordechai and Esther lived in Shushan, and they were going to be the saviors of bring the Gula to Klal Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu had to arrange the whole thing with the scare, because he had to get them to do tshuva, and Mordechai and Esther were the ones who were going to save Klal Yisrael. So we have to move the whole scene. We have to get Achashverosh and his whole court, kingly court, over to Shushan. So he put this juke in his head. I got to have a throne. Couldn't move the throne. Moved it over, and now he's got a lavish party, right? You can't miss a word, right? Bayom b'sheves hamelech Achashverosh akisei malchus asher b'Shushan. The kisei malchus was in Shushan on purpose for Mordechai and Esther. So everything. So what do we see? So we learn out from here. Many things happen in our lives, and they look like they're unrelated, they're meaningless, they're unintentional, and everything that happens somehow or other is very important piece of the puzzle of a grander picture. This is one thing we have to realize. Everything is hashgacha pratis, even in our own lives. Now, the next part of the of the Megillah, Gam Vashti Amalka. She made a Mishnah. Why should she make a Mishnah? Since when? Since when? By the Jews, I understand. Men make their party and women make their party. Separation of the genders. Since when by Goyim is there separation of the genders? Why is Vashti making her own party for the women? You know, they were prutzim. They should have had the women mixing with the men, according, you know, what the Goyim normally do.
Well, kings get sick of their wives all the time.
Deeper than that. Nebuchadnezzar was a stable boy. He had no say. He had no what? Achashverosh. I'm sorry. Achashverosh had been a stable boy. He bought his way into the kingship, into the right, and he married royalty. He made sure he married royalty. Vashti was his key to being royal, and Vashti is watching her husband, and he's getting. More and more, his ego is getting inflated more and more by the day. 180 days of drinking, 180 days of showing off. The guy is so inflated now, she couldn't stand it. His whole right to be the king is me. And who does this guy think he is? So I'll show him. So she threw a party. She threw her own party for all the women. Where did she pick the party to be? In the king's private chambers. You know, the king has a public courtyard where he takes the audience of all the people. That's where the king had the Achashverosh had his party. It was in all the public areas of the castle, of the palace. But there was a room, must have been a gorgeous room. You know, a gorgeous room was the private study, the private living room of the king. Nobody's allowed in this living room. And where did Vashti decide to make this party? In the king's and Achashverosh private room. I'll show him who's boss around here. And that's what she did. So she made a grand party and she brought all the women in. Right there, they're having a good time, cackling away.
Is this from any Yaakov, Rabbi?
This is a combination of the combination of the. It's, a lot of it's in Gemara Megillah. Gemara Megillah has a lot of this, and other things are in the Midrashim. And the Gra picks up on this. The Gra picks up on the nuances, what's happening. Now it says this is in the Gemara, and it says that this private room where Vashti happened to choose, she's going to show off, she's going to show Achashverosh who she is, happened to share a wall with the room, the hall, the banquet hall where Achashverosh was. And it happened to be that Achashverosh was sitting right up behind with all his friends and cohorts, and all the inner cabinet was all around him, and all the government officials were in around him, and they were right behind the wall where all the women gabbing away, and they're listening and they hear the women's voices. And what does a goy think about when he hears women talking? You know, my wife, she's a Parisian. She's, French. She's the most beautiful wife in the world. Most beautiful one. What are you talking about? My wife is Spanish. She's the most beautiful in the world. They started arguing about who's the most beautiful woman in the world. The Persians, the Medes, Modai. Who's the most beautiful woman in the world, right? So Achashverosh is not going to let himself be outdone. My wife is a Kazdi. It's Bovel, the Kazdim. My wife is a Kazdi, and nobody is like her. She beats them all. She takes the beauty pageant for them all. So everybody says, okay, we'll believe you. Prove it. We want you to bring her out here wearing only the crown. That's what they demanded, that she come out wearing only a crown. Now, Vashti was not exactly known for high moral standards. I mean, like, this was standard in those days to have such a party with women running around scantily clad, right? So that was okay, especially when you're drunk. But she was upset with Achashverosh. Achashverosh is not going to do this to me, right? You don't order me around. So she sent him a message, I'm not coming. You stable boy. She rubbed it in. You stable boy. Don't forget who you are. You're a stable boy. Now, Achashverosh this is after 180 days of drinking. He's not exactly,
Not exactly stable.
right? He was furious. He was furious for refusing the king. That's Morid B'Malchus. There should be one judgment for a Morid B'Malchus. You got to take the pimple on your shoulders, the pimple that's between your shoulders should be removed. Right? Off with her head. That's what should have been done. And that's eventually what happened. Right? But he didn't want to do that. I mean, she's the most beautiful girl, person in the world, and he needs her, and she's his ticket to the Malucha. Maybe we could, but it's bad for public relations over here. Like, if I let this go, really. So he wanted to send her out to exile. We'll build a palace somewhere out in Afghanistan, a beautiful palace. Put her in there, lock her up with guards. She can't get out. I'll go visit every once in a while. And Shalom al-Yisrael, Shalom al-Agoyim, right? Shalom al-Agoyim, right? That's what he wanted. Now, there was a rule. There's a rule that they made a very smart rule. They knew that the kings in Babel, or Persia, right? They sometimes it got to their heads, and they did things very rashly, and especially the people around them. So if the people who are always chummy with the king said the wrong word at the wrong time, right? So the king would say, take his head off. So it was very dangerous to be around the king. So they made a rule. Anything which is related to the king, an insult to the king's honor, anything which is related to the king cannot judge on it. It's got to go to a special court. It's got to go to a special court, and that's the court. This is like it's got his inner cabinet in it. It's got the big higher ups there, and that would protect them. That would protect all the ministers, the upper ministers, that they don't have to worry about being near the king, right? Because they got a protection system. It goes to their court. Oh, yes, it's a terrible thing what Vashti did. I think she should be exiled to Afghanistan. That's what Achashverosh was hoping for, right? So he looked at they were sitting there, this court, this inner cabinet, these ministers, right? They were sitting there, and he looked at them and was about to hand over the judgment, right? What we're going to do. And they're all talking about what we should do with Vashti. And all of a sudden, a fellow named Memuchan, that was Haman. He had a nickname called Memuchan. He piped up. Now, Memuchan had just been elevated into this inner cabinet. He was a freshman, a freshman senator. You got a freshman member of the Knesset. You got to know your place. You don't speak first. You wait till all the seniority speaks, and then you put in your 2 cents. This guy Haman, he had a wife, Zeresh. Now, Zeresh was smarter than him. Haman was not so smart. He was a stable boy. No, that was Achashverosh's stable boy. But Haman was a barber. Sorry, Haman was a barber. Haman had been a barber.
From Shushan? He lived in Shushan?
Yeah. But he came over with the capital.
I mean, he already what?
No, when the capital moved over so he went with the king. He was trying to get into the politics. He was getting, his wife Zeresh was pushing him into politics. She pushed him up and up and up and up and up, right? So he was no longer a barber. He had originally been a barber. No. That was Achashverosh's Shomer Susim. Haman was a barber. So that's why later on, when Mordechai needed a haircut, so Esther closed all the barbershops, and Haman had to give him a haircut. He knew how to give a haircut. Anyway, it was like rubbing it in. That's all you are. So Zeresh had pushed him in, and she was Persian. He was an Amaleki, Agagi. He was an Amaleki, and she was a Persian. She was smarter than him, and he had gotten pushed up because of her. So really, his position now he got into the inner cabinet was all because of her. But he can't stand it. He can't stand it. She's always she's always showing me up and everything like that. So he says, okay, we're going to talk in my house. We're talking, here in Israel, you got an Israeli married an American. We're talking English. No, we're talking Hebrew. We're talking English. No, we're talking Hebrew. You know how, so we're talking Amaleki. No, we're talking Persian. We're talking Amaleki. We're talking Persian. He had a fight with his wife. So he says, oh, here's my chance. Here's my chance. And then he says, he jumps up. He's a freshman. He just moved in. He came into the cabinet yesterday. The seniority. Freshmen don't speak up. He spoke up because he wanted to get his point across. You think that Vashti has done an avera, has slighted only the king? She has now caused a national crisis. All the women are going to hear what Vashti did, and all the women are going to revolt against their husbands. It's a national crisis. It cannot go unanswered. We have to get rid of Vashti. We have to bring in a new queen. And he said, and the king, because this is not just related to the king, everything which insults the king is related to the whole country. So it's not just whatever's for the king's honor, it's related to the whole country. Things like this should not go to the special court. So one, he said that the king should declare to execute Vashti, and secondly, everybody should agree to abolish the special court. And lo and behold, everybody agreed. That was foolhardy. That was all the ministers' protection against the whims of a finicky and a fickle and an impetuous king who you don't know what he's going to do. Like the drop of a hat, he'll say, off with your head. And they agreed that he should have the full right. So all of a sudden, everybody agreed. They handed it over to Achashverosh, and Achashverosh ordered Vashti executed. We don't need her anymore. She should never come in front of the king, and therefore there's no need for her. Off with her head. And that's what they did. That's what they did. And now he has the right to judge anything he wants at the drop of a hat.
Not just for that case, it was for all.
All the laws change. Haman made sure that the law got changed because that was the way because he didn't want to have to go through all the protocol of everybody's going to discuss it, and not so. We need Vashti. They knew. No. He wants the king to decide. The king decided, and that was it. And now it's made a proclamation. All the women have to give honor to their husbands and speak the language of the husband. Amaleki. Right? So Haman thought he won. Now, what happens after the party's over, huh? You had a 187-day party. Party's over, and you wake up in the morning with a hangover, a 187-day hangover. And the higher you got during the party, the lower you get when you crash. And Achashverosh crashed. He fell into a depression. And it says, how do we know that? It says in Perek Beis, Achar HaDevorim Ha'ela, after all these things, Kashoy Chamas HaMelech, when the Achashverosh's anger died down, And he remembered Vashti. I don't have Vashti anymore, my beautiful Vashti. V'yomru narei HaMelech, the narei HaMelech, Mishars of all his servant boys. Right, he had servant boys. He had, the servant boys and the butlers and the floor cleaners and the waiters. Right, they all said, make a beauty party, a beauty contest. We'll make a beauty contest and we'll look for the most beautiful woman, someone who's just as beautiful, not more beautiful than Vashti. What? One second. That's not what Haman asked. Haman, when he said we'll find a new queen, we'll find a queen who's better, Karausa, she's equal to Vashti, meaning royalty. Anybody who's in the government understood, and that's the way it's done, that a king marries royalty. That's what I mean. I remember there was some, I forget the details, but the royalty, the royal house of England, they have to marry the royal house of Spain, and the royal house of Spain marries the royal house of Amsterdam, and then and Luxembourg. They have to marry into royalty. It's always been done like that for hundreds of, maybe 1,000 years. That's the way it works. You did work until now in Europe. They got all upset when the future king in England, King Edward, in the 1920s, he fell in love with a commoner. So he had to abdicate the throne. You can't marry a commoner. You got to marry royalty. So what's got to do with a beauty contest? What's got to do with a beauty contest? Haman had just gotten rid of the protection clause. There was a protection clause to protect all the government ministers if the king, he was a hothead, and there was a protection clause that if he couldn't say off with his head, it had to go to the court. That was gone. At the drop of a hat, if you got on the bad side of the king, and the king's now depressed, all of a sudden, all the government ministers, all the inner cabinet, they suddenly disappeared. They took a vacation. They had very important work to do in the colonies. Nobody was around. There was nobody around for him to ask. There was nobody around for him to call a cabinet meeting and decide who's going to be the king. He was left with the cleaning guy and the butler and the janitor and the helpers. These young kids. They're not too intelligent, right? And so he was looking for somebody to ask advice. He started talking about what he needs. Oh, that's easy, King. Hey, King, we'll have a beauty contest, and we'll find somebody just as beautiful. That's all. That's all they look for. They didn't look for royalty. They only look for beauty.
I think that was Achashverosh's idea, though.
He's V'yomer Nari HaMelech, Misharsav Yavakshu HaMelech Naros. The Nari HaMelech told him this. Pasuk, Beis.
Yeah, but there's also there's a keta in Gemara that says Ratza lit'om kacha, evi kacha, Ratza lit'om kacha.
I don't. It's a Mefurish pasuk. You have to find if there's a Gemara but it can't go against this pasuk. The pasuk says the Na'arei HaMelech Mishorsav Bivakshu HaMelech Naros Basulas Toibus Mare. And then the king, he said, okay, we're going to send out messengers for the beauty contest. Why did this happen? And it says, you have to get the sequence. Nothing is inconsequential. Nothing is inconsequential. We have to get Esther into the Melucha. Now Esther, first of all, she's got one strike. She's Jewish, and we know how much Achashverosh and the people there, they loved Jews in those days, just like they love Jews today. There's no way a Jew could get into the palace, no way. Secondly, Mordechai, he was very smart, and he told her, don't tell your yichus. They won't even know who you are. You're just an asufi. A Sufi means like, you picked up a kid, you found a baby on a park bench and you had Rahmanis on it, you picked it up, that's called a Sufi. You're ma'aseh if you just, an abandoned child. She was an abandoned child. Mordechai had Rahmanis. He brought her in, he took her in and he raised her, and nobody knew what her yichus was. She had no yichus. She refused to tell her yichus, right? The only thing she had was beauty. So Kodesh Baruch Hu arranged the whole thing in order to get Esther in. So that was because she got sick. She was sick. She was sick from Agmas Nefesh. The fact that he is a Beis Yaakov girl who had been taken into the beauty contest of the party of the palace and was about to marry a goy. It made her sick. That's why it says she was jaundiced. Yeah. You lose your whole complexion. You become like yellow and green, and I mean, she was sick to the core. A Beis Yaakov girl is being taken in like that, and to live with a goy.
She was married already.
And she was married, according to one opinion. She was married to Mordechai. Yeah, and she knew what was going on. It was terrible. Anyway, so if Achashverosh had asked his advisors, so they would have said royalty. So he had to get rid of the advisors. So again, what do we see? So what do we see? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the whole scene. The whole scene. Then we have, that was the first Achar HaDevar Me'ela. Now we have the second Achar HaDevar Me'ela. So the Gemara learns another halacha from here. Just like you're not allowed, you can't miss one word of the Megillah because everything is important. The sequence is important. Sometimes the Baal Kairi, he skipped something. He skipped the pasuk. He looked up and he started the wrong place. So you go back. So we don't do this, but al pi strict halacha, even in Kriyas HaTorah, if you realize that you skip something, you can insert it anywhere. Because it's not necessarily there's a timeline sequence. If you skipped a perek, so you say that perek that you missed, and wherever you are, you did a whole Kriyas HaTorah, and somebody says there was a problem, you missed the pasuk. So say the pasuk at the end of the Kriyas HaTorah. Al pi strict in. We try not to do that, but al pi strict in, you can't do that in Megillah. You can't do that in Megillah. It says not allowed to read the Megillah backwards, meaning to out of order. It has to totally be in order. Why? The sequence is very important. Why is the sequence important? After everything that happened, then we got Haman. So we learn halacha. What's the halacha? Kodesh Baruch Hu prepares the refuah before the makkah. Before Haman comes on to the major scene, first he created the refuah. What's the refuah? Esther is the queen. And also, I can't go into it, but Mordechai, he revealed, he discovered an assassination attempt. There's always been assassination attempts. So he discovered an assassination attempt, and Esther told the king about the assassination attempt, and it was written down, Mordechai, in the archives of the king, that Mordechai had saved the king's life. After we got the refuah, now the Kodesh Baruch Hu brings the makkah. This is very important for us to know. This is very important for us to know. Sometimes you see something bad happening to you. Sometimes it looks like it's a terrible makkah. You should always know, Kodesh Baruch Hu has already prepared the refuah. Somehow, it's going to work out well, and it's already been prepared to have it work out. Everything that is necessary for it to work out well is already there on the scene.
So the guy who shot Trump's assassin was Jewish as well, you think?
That's by Yidden. Trump is a puppet. We'll get to the Trump. You
explained the whole story for Achashverosh and Haman. It was Ashkecha Pratit.
Yeah. There's everything. We'll skip over to to Haman. I'll try to make it short, because I mean I could spend 3-4 hours on this. Haman was so now the plan was that Esther had a plan. She was going to ask the king to save the Jews. She didn't exactly know how to do it, but she was going to ask the king to save the Jews from Haman's scheme that he wanted to destroy all the Jews. Haman, so she went to the king, and she's all dolled up, and she's standing there. Now, normally the king, he's in his courtroom, and his courtroom is separate. It has it's not. There was a rule: anybody who walks into the king's area, the guards immediately had the orders off with his head. If he's not invited, doesn't have a pass to get in, off with his head, without asking any questions. That's just the automatic, rules of the royal guard, right? Normally, the king is around the corner. He can't see who's coming in. This time, the king was sitting in the main room, on the main throne. He wasn't in his courtroom. He was in the main royal throne, which is right opposite the doorway. And in walks Esther, and she looks terrible. I mean, she's after 3 days of fasting. She didn't look good, right? And she looks terrible. And she had just risked her life. She had just risked her life, because if the king didn't put out his throne, his scepter, right, as a sign that she's invited, the guards were already going towards her with their sabers, right, or their hatchets to chop off her head. And he's looking at her, and he says, if the queen is endangering her life, something's up. There's something happening, and it's very dangerous, and I don't know what it is, and nobody's telling me, and I have to find out what it is. So he extended the scepter, and he saved her. Now, he was the kind of guy who could have, how dare she? Look what he did with Vashti. How dare she? Coming in here unannounced, uninvited, off with her head. He did it to Vashti already, Come on,
Yeah, but he regretted that.
Huh?
He regretted that.
But he was in
Learn from his mistakes.
No, he doesn't learn from his mistakes. You
That's it. You get upset.
you get upset. That's it. So I'll find another one. I'll make another beauty contest. What's the big deal?
Well, she was 60. I mean, he didn't figure she was hot.
I don't know. Anyway, so he was nervous. He wanted to find out what's going on. So he called her over, and she says, and she was smart. She didn't immediately ask she was waiting for a sign, min hashamayim, that she should approach the king about, what's going on. So she said, I want to make a party for you and Haman tonight. So you and Haman. So she goes away. Haman goes home. He's so happy. He's invited personally, just me and the king, to the party. We're going to have a drink together, right? And then he sees Mordechai, and he's all upset. So what does Zeresh tell him? So Zeresh tells him, this is very, very simple. You're good with the king. Build a gallows, 50 amas high. How much is 50 amas, guys?
25 meters.
Huh? 50 amas, yeah. 8 stories. Now, I don't believe Shushan, maybe the palace was giant, but I don't think the houses in Shushan were that big. 2 stories, 3 stories, and this was 8-story high gallows. It could be seen from you're going to hang Mordechai on the gallows. Everybody's going to see it for days and days and days. You're going to enjoy watching his body hanging, swinging in the wind, right? Just remember that. He made this gallows 50 amas high, right? Now, the king, he can't sleep. Something's going on. The queen didn't tell me. And she invited Haman, and she invited me to a party. What's with her and Haman? What's going on with her and Haman? And nobody's telling me what's going on between her and Haman. They're in cahoots. It's another assassination attempt. What's happening? Who? So nobody's telling me. I didn't give somebody the right honor, the right reward, and therefore I don't have any friends. So who's my friend? So he called in, right? And in the meanwhile, Zeresh told Haman, go tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning, when nobody's around, so nobody can Nobody will interfere with your discussion with the king. And you tell the king to hang Mordechai on the gallows. In the meanwhile, the king, he has them read the archives, and they found out that Mordechai saved his life from the assassination attempt. Has anything been done? No. All of a sudden, and now it's morning already. All of a sudden, he hears rustling in the courtyard. Who's there? Oh, he's looking for. He's got to discuss this with somebody. He's got to figure out what to do now. So he said, Haman's there. Bring him in. Bring Haman in. Haman was about to open his mouth. I want to kill Mordechai. And the king stops him. And the king he didn't mention Mordechai's name. What is to be done with the person that the king wants to give honor and glory to? Who? Who does the king want to give honor and glory more than me? Must be me, right? So, right, take the king's horse, put on the king's begodim, and have one of the king's servants, and put the crown on his head, and it's going to go around. So the king said, okay, you take Mordechai, put the king's garments on him, put him on the king's horse, and lead him around. He left out the crown. He didn't say put the crown on his head. The crown stays on my head. He left out the crown. So says, you take Mordechai. Now Haman, he wanted to explain to the king who Mordechai really was, how he was a despicable person. He couldn't. The king says, do it right now. Now, if you don't do it right now, if the king is, what do you do if you don't do it right now with this king? And, he can say, So he immediately had to go ahead and kiss her. So he's going around there. He comes home depressed. And he tells Zeresh. Now he has a conversation with Zeresh, his wife. And he says, V'yasapro Haman l'Zeresh ishto l'kol ha'oyevav kol asher karohu. Everything that happened to him. He was a Maleki. He was the man of just happened. There's no religions, no supernatural powers. There's no God. This just happened. He told Zeresh everything that just happened. Zeresh was not like that. This guy's a Jew. This Mordechai's a Jew. And we know the God of the Jews, when they start rising, they rise to the heavens. Take the gallows down. They started arguing about whether to take we're not taking the gallows down. You're taking the gallows down. We're not taking the gallows. That time, just as they're arguing, they didn't get a chance to finish arguing. Maybe she would have won. But they left the gallows up, and all of a sudden, they come in, and they cart him off to the party. They cart him off to the party. You know the whole story, right? And then Esther, what's up? And she says, there's a terrible person, this Ish, this terrible lowly person, right? He wants to destroy everything. He wants to destroy my people. He wants to kill me. Haman. Haman almost faints. And the king is furious. This guy wants to kill my queen? This guy wants to kill my queen? But I need Haman. So he went out to the garden to cool down. Haman's good for it. He was a good guy. They used to drink together, and they had deals together. I mean, he didn't want to do anything.
He had the ring.
Haman had a
ring with everything.
He left Haman with everything. Yeah. Anyway, he had a ring. He was able to do things. Right. That's the previous part of the Megillah. Anyway, I got 5 minutes left. I got to finish. So he went out to the garden. He sees them uprooting the garden. Who told you to do this? Haman. They were cutting down trees for the gallows to make it even higher, to make it even sturdier. So he walks back in there, and Haman is pleading. He's right in front. He's on his knees in front of the queen, pleading for his life. And then the king comes in. He's got to stand up, and he trips accidentally. Malach pushed him, and he's now on the queen, right? And he tries to get up, and his feet just don't cooperate. You know why? Because there's a malach pushing him down on the queen. And the king walks in. Gam lichbosh amalka be'imi baboyes. You're trying to assault the queen while I'm here? Now we have Charvona. Now we have the famous Charvona, Zochar Latov. What did Charvona say? Echad min asariz levnei hamelech hinei ha'etz asher oso haman lemordechai asher diber toiv al hamelech. Now you can read this pasuk two ways. The way we read it is that the eitz that Haman made for Mordechai, who spoke good about the king, and he wants to hang the guy who wants to save the king's life. The Gra says that's not how Achashverosh heard it. Achashverosh heard v'gam, right? It's eitz asher also Haman leMordechai asher diber, because Mordechai spoke, and it's also good for the king. This gallows. He wants to kill me also. Off with his head. If Haman had not made a gallows 50 amas high, the king wouldn't have seen it. And Charvona it would have taken a little bit of time. Maybe Haman could have bought some time to explain to the king what's going on. But since they saw and Charvona was able to point at the gallows, so Haman had did himself in.
Well, the king picked up on the fact that Haman was trying to dethrone him.
Yes, but it was because the Makkah Patish was because he saw the gallows.
Right. Because at first, if he hates Mordechai, and when the king asked him,
but
what should I do? Give him the crown, give him everything. He was like, oh, he wanted everybody to see him in my clothes because he's the next in succession. He wants everybody to think that he's now he's trying to take my wife.
Now this is what he all of a sudden all realized this.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have to realize that life is a succession. Life is a succession. It's a giant tapestry, and a Kosh Baruch Hu, there's Hashgacha Pratis, and everything that we see, and is everything run by Hashem. In the Megillah, it says Hamelach. Hashem's name is not mentioned once in the Megillah. But the Chazal tell us when it says Hamelach without a Melech HaChashverosh, it means the Ribono Shel Olam. So they ask the question, how can Hamelach be the Ribono Shel Olam and also Achashverosh, a goy? Achashverosh is nothing. Achashverosh is just a puppet. He's a nothing. Hamelach means the Ribono Shel Olam. And we have to remember this with Baruch Hashem, Donald Trump is in now. Things are different. It's a new world, but he's only a puppet. If we don't treat a Kosh Baruch Hu right, Kosh Baruch Hu could turn the whole thing around, and just like he could start doing things behind Bibi's back. Donald Trump could turn into another Biden, or even worse. It's all up to our relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam, and I wish everybody a Freilich and Purim, La Yehudim Hoyes Ha'arav V'Simcha Sasan Vikar.